有个男的关于法律，他不在乎。那事件他有2女朋友，但是对他们都不，我忘记了，我忘记怎么说。20 what? Hello, I'm William Gosling. I've been working at Changshan branch for almost 2 years. So I started in March in 2018. I've been studying HSK for probably just under 2 years, the same amount of time. I think I started maybe a month or 2 after starting work here in China. And I hope to get to the end of HSK4 at least before I leave. I just started HSK4 today, actually. 好好学习，天天向上。
I'm Ali. I'm from England. I've been working at York for 2.5 years, and I work at Jingtian branch in Shenzhen. I don't know what level I'm aiming for, and I've been on and off studying since I came to China 2.5 years ago. Sometimes there might be very intense studying for a month or 2 and then maybe just completely stop for a month or 2 depending on what's going on. So yeah, on and off, but kind of the whole time. Yeah. 努力学习，天天向上。
Hello, my name is Imogen. I work at Changshan branch and I've been studying Chinese for a year and a half. I've studied HSK for about a year. I'm aiming for as high as I can get right now. Yeah, I'm on level 2, but I'd like to be able to take an exam that I can kind of put on my CV and use in the future. 学习中文最好的方法是住在中国。
My name's Josh. My Chinese name is Ke Reitie. I'm from Australia and I've been living in Fuzhou for 7 months and 1 week. I work at Hutian. I'm not aiming for any particular level of HSK. I've been studying for maybe 2 months and I'm doing HSK 1. 我和我弟弟会打篮球。
Hello, my name's Max. I work at Changshan and I've lived in China for 11 months. I've been studying almost the whole time I've been here, and I'm still on HSK 1 because it's very difficult to balance studying and having a job and a social life. But that being said, I've also had 2 different tutors during my time here, so keeping up with lessons if a tutor leaves or if you change tutors are also quite difficult. But your TAs are great resources to use to practice. If you learn something in a lesson, definitely go and practice it on the people who can speak Chinese in your branches. 你好，我叫马克思，我住在福州，在中国。我是英国人，我是英语老师，我喜欢中国。
My name is Tab. I'm from the UK and I've been living in Fuzhou for 4 months now, nearly 4 months, and I'm a teacher at Changshan. I have been studying HSK for 2 months now, or maybe 1 month on HSK. I did some conversational Chinese before that and now I'm doing HSK. I'd really like to get to level 2 by the time I leave China, but right now I just need to get to the level 1 exam. 我叫高乐琪，我是英文老师，我最 我最喜欢蓝色。
Sometimes people will like stand around me and they go, oh, that foreigner, he doesn't know what we're saying. And I turn around to them and said, yes, I know what you're saying. And they're so shocked every time.
So did you respond to them like in Chinese?
Yeah. So they'll say like, oh, 那个外国人不知道我们说什么。I said, 不是，我听懂，我听得懂。So they it's like, whoa, a bit embarrassed maybe.
Not that interesting, I guess, but I find it quite funny how people call their family members by what their relationship to them is, which it's just an interesting link. I noticed the other day that quite often little kids seem to struggle to remember even their Chinese name. It's probably, I feel like they're not even getting called that Chinese name that much at home. It's always Xiaopengyo or Didi or something like that. So when you use the Chinese name, they still don't really know.
I think probably the most shocking thing is that a lot of Chinese people forget how to write Chinese. So like in class, if there are some new words, I'll ask my TA, oh, can you write butterfly in Chinese? And they're like going to write it and they forget like, oh, I don't know what happens in this part. So they have to look up butterfly on their phone. And it's happened like with all my TAs. I think it's quite common since everybody just texts nowadays. Yeah.
I remember when I first got into the office, it sounded like the TAs were having an argument for 2 minutes, but then everyone's laughing and I was so confused, but it's because I had no idea what was being said, only the volume and tone it's being spoken at, but it's just because that's the way it is. You learn it. I definitely enjoy it now, going into restaurants. When I first learned my first bit of Chinese, I was very quiet and then shama. Whereas now you speak to them with confidence at the same volume they speak to you at. The whole process goes much smoother.
You probably realise how much people are talking about you. I think you live in a bit of a state of blissful ignorance before you know that people are talking about you. But it's usually meant very nicely. It's more just suddenly you'll hear like a word like Ingwen or Meigwaran or whatever, and you'll suddenly think like, oh, they must be talking about me, which is quite funny. So you realise people are talking about you, but you also know that it's never in like a negative way or a malicious way. So I think, yeah, realising that people are having a chat, and also it's just nice to be able to very occasionally communicate back with people when they ask in the lift, like, where are you from? Or, oh, you're English, or whatever, you're American. It's nice to be able to actually reply and have a bit of a chat with them. So that's really nice as well. Yeah, so.
Well, I wanted to take the HSK exam because I want to make sure I have something tangible to show people I can speak Chinese. My original plan was to go back to Australia and teach Chinese there to Australians in the public school, and because you need some sort of qualification to do that, I decided to get the HSK4 exam certificate.
I don't know. I think HSK is the main course people study when they're learning Chinese. So it just seemed kind of, I don't know, everyone else was doing it, so I thought that it was probably the best route. Whether I will take the exam, I don't know. I know for the lower levels I won't take the exam because I just want to be able to speak Chinese. But maybe after I leave China, I'll take the exam.
To connect with people, I guess. Yeah, I think Chinese people are very welcoming and friendly and helpful, but it's impossible to know unless you can communicate with them.
I think, to be completely honest, it will look very good on a CV. Not that many people back home, no one I know can speak Chinese, has any Chinese qualifications. So I think even though now I could go home and comfortably say, oh, I can speak everyday Chinese, having an official qualification in it that looks great on a CV is one of the main reasons, I would say.
I think HSK is good because it's very internationally recognised, so wherever I end up working in the world, if I want to use Mandarin again, I'll be able to kind of have a qualification that's really well known.
So I started by teaching myself. I went to the York English free lessons. They provided some lessons for me. But I had previously studied some Chinese in university level. I have forgotten a little bit of Chinese, but I remembered some, and soon I realized that the free lessons were a bit easy for me. So I looked into getting my own tutor, which I did. And after probably about a year, just over a year, my tutor had to leave. So I found another tutor, and I'm still learning with that tutor now.
In those 2.5 years, a mix, mostly teaching myself in Fuzhou and here. Been going to the Chinese classes that York does. I have had an official Chinese teacher in Shenzhen for a little bit, but she lived too far away and just took too much time.
I have private lessons every week for an hour and a half, and then usually during the week I will study with some friends. Sometimes my teacher comes along and we study together.
I have a one-on-one tutor. I study by myself, and Huqian also has a Chinese class that we do together.
I have a teacher called Alicia, who we have like one-on-one classes once a week, and they've been really good so far. And I also meet up with some other teachers on a Wednesday to just practice, do some writing, a bit of conversation, just to practice a bit more, so that's really good as well.
Yeah, I try and practice the language every day if I can. And sometimes I have to practice the language because I have to order dinner, or I have to take a taxi somewhere, or people just come and talk to me and say, "Can you speak Chinese?" and have a small conversation with them. Also, I have a girlfriend who is really good at Chinese, and I like to speak Chinese to her as well. I feel really good about Chinese. I love learning it, and it's very interesting to see the difference between English and Chinese.
Yeah, sometimes, like I say with the girlfriend, some little phrases always get said in Chinese, a little bit of practice. Like when we're asking about what should we eat, 吃什么, or I'm full, or 很饱了. 饱了, I can't remember the tone. But yeah, little things like that. So yeah, little bits of daily practice, because that's obviously what you have to do if you want to learn, is every day.
I try to, but my boyfriend speaks better Chinese than I do, so I don't speak as much as I should. But yeah, I think living in China is really the best way to get as much speaking practice as possible, and you do end up using it because you have to.
It's very hard. I do try and practice every day. My biggest problem is that sometimes Chinese people assume that I can't speak Chinese, and so they don't actually listen to what I say, and they do what they think I want rather than what I'm saying. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd say you practice it every time you go outside, really. No one in Fuzhou really speaks English other than people who teach English. So every time you go into a restaurant, you want to take a taxi, you're practicing your Chinese with the tones, the pronunciation. And then the content from HSK is something I practice more with the TAs. If I learn a new phrase, a new grammar structure, I'll definitely try it out on them, and sometimes they have no idea what I'm saying, so I know I need to practice myself a bit more. But sometimes you can have a more fluid conversation, and that feels great when you can actually speak to Chinese people in their own language and not feel so useless.
Yeah, I probably do speak Chinese every day, I think. Just things like to order food, and sometimes it's useful in teaching as well, like for checking grammar and checking understanding. When you're checking Chinese, it's nice to be able to say, okay, what's this in Chinese? and you actually know the answer. You don't have to rely on the TA, so that's really cool. So yeah, I would say I probably speak Chinese most days now, but in a very limited way, just a few words.
The hardest part of learning Chinese for me is probably, even though I've learnt the grammar, remembering to use the grammar in my conversations. For example, there's so many ways to say something in Chinese, just like in English. But there's better ways to say it using the proper grammar, and you just have to remember how to use the proper grammar.
Two things. Listening is definitely one of them, because people don't understand how slowly they need to speak for you to understand it, and how clearly, and how much in actual putonghua they need to use. Like, if it's something else, then there's no chance. So that, and then grammar. And I talk to other teachers about this sometimes as well. Like, we look at something that's written, we'll understand or know every character in the sentence, but have no idea what it's saying. The grammar will just be completely changed to what we expect. It's not just subject, verb, object. It's some weird phrase, some idiomatic phrase that we're just, okay, yeah.
The most challenging part for me, I'd say, is grammar. The words are quite easy to learn because they're all just very short, and I find the tones easy to learn, characters. But yeah, like the grammar, the word order is a lot different from English, so you have to kind of just get used to it.
The most challenging part is probably just having the courage to get it wrong. It's kind of scary because with 4 tones and different vowel sounds, sometimes what you say is not what they hear.
The most challenging part of speaking Chinese for me is definitely the tones, because I have such a monotone voice. I'm not used to speaking with 4 different tones, other than you use intonation in English to put emphasis on different words or ask questions. But yeah, it's the difference between first, second, third, fourth. The first tone, I would say, is the hardest one for me. I cannot seem to get my head around it. But that being said, if I try and say one word or one small sentence, I'll over-focus on the tones. Actually, if you speak with confidence and you speak a little bit quicker than you think you should get by just fine.
The reading is quite difficult. I love the way that written Chinese looks, but yeah, it's definitely difficult to kind of read and immediately understand what something means. But I am persevering because I know that pinyin is only for little kids in China, so trying to go straight for the characters. But yeah, the reading is pretty tough, and the tones can be difficult sometimes. If you just get the slightest thing a little bit off, it could change the whole meaning of the words, so that can be pretty hard as well when you're trying to be understood.
If you're doing 1 lesson per week, study throughout the week. Don't leave it until the night before, because that's not really an appropriate way to learn a language.
Whenever you learn a new grammar, well, this is just a personal one for me, if I ever learn a new grammar point, just try and make as many silly sentences as you can with it. Just things that make you laugh, and then just text someone who's going to understand it, and then say it to someone, and just use it as much as you can, doing silly or rude things with the grammar. that's something that works for me.
Yeah, I would say get as much speaking in as possible if you want to learn to speak more fluently. And a lot of people are intimidated by learning the Chinese characters, but I'd say you just need to persevere with it. Don't just rely on pinyin, because you can't use that when you're in China. So yeah, get some good apps where you can do flashcards to learn your characters, and yeah, it's not so difficult after all. Yeah, I use Quizlet, so you can make your own sets, or you can find sets that other people have made of just flashcards where on one side it has the character, and on the other side it has the pinyin and the English.
Writing isn't impossible. It looks really hard, but the more I've tried to write, the more it's helped me understand grammar and how things fit together. And when I go to new places, I can read little bits off a menu or out the front of a shop, which helps.
Speak as much as you can, because most of us are going to live in China for a limited amount of time. We're not going to live here forever. Speak to as many people as often as you can, speak as much as you can, listen as much as you can, because when we go home, I definitely want to keep on practicing Chinese and I will read the characters and study like that. But you are in China, speak to people, listen to people, because you're never going to get that opportunity again.
I think just trying to do some review as much as possible. You don't have to do like hours a day, but I think if you want to move on quickly, the thing that I've learned through not doing this myself is the best way to move quickly is to try and only use your lessons or your tutorials for new things, and kind of spend your own time, your free time, reviewing things you've already learned, because it just speeds up the process and it means that you kind of move on a lot quicker. So things like making flashcards. There's an app called Quizlet that one of the other teachers showed me where you can make and download pre-made flashcards for practicing Chinese. That's really good. And if you know any Chinese people who are willing to have a quick chat with you, obviously definitely do that. They're always really helpful. Like, they will find it funny and laugh at you when you make mistakes, but it's in a very nice, well-meaning way. So like, talk to TAs, talk to the kids after class if you want to. Like, yeah, talk to people in the office, talk to people on the street, buy food. And if you don't know what to say, TPR it, don't just reach you for your phone. So yeah, I think just knowing you're going to make mistakes but giving it a go anyway is probably the best tip.